What do dancers and security professionals have in common? They need to be able to recognize movement patterns, and that's why I'm talking to Sandra today. So, Sandra, if you would like to introduce yourself a little bit.
Sure. Thank you, Inga. Thank you for having me. Well, yes, my name is Sandra Adiarte. I live and work in Germany, but I'm also currently a PhD student at the Tactical Research Unit at the Bond University in Australia, where I'm investigating threat based on movement patterns in relations between law enforcement officers and the general public. And yeah, I come from a background of movement education and dance and psychology and forensics. And I'm combining interdisciplinary approaches and methodology for enhancing security management.
Okay, I found it very interesting that you have a background in dancing and you somehow shifted into this tactical field. And how
Yes.
did that happen?
Yeah, it's a good question. For me, it was very um, logical because I always wondered how is that possible that what we do in creating movement or correcting movement or analyze movement when we do dance or teach dance, how is it possible that we do not apply this kind of detailed microanalysis and the approaches that go with it to security management? And I started looking for hints if somebody has done that before and where it was done. And I found out that, of course, there's been former attempts to include these kind of assessment tools into security management or areas related to security management. Um, but for me, I spent over 30 years of my life moving and correcting people in movement and also understanding why I correct certain things because I see or spot certain things, and coming from this notion of analyzing movements and what I need to say in order to make somebody move differently, right? This kind of all got tangled up in my internship that I did in the forensics myself when I was in the movement therapy training. And there again, I started looking at, offenders of any kind and started wondering again, how come we're not using these kind of things here? And I started exploring more and more and came to the conclusion it would actually be really useful.
Okay, so what are your key findings in your research so far?
Mm. So I'm currently compiling the data to do the publications in relation to it. So it will be out hopefully soon. Um, but the key findings, of course, are that there is a profession related perception control that somebody applies, which is based on the experience that you bring. But this includes personal patterns of perception control as well as experienced, elements of things that you kind of learn that you then apply into how you assess a scenario, how you assess a setting. And of course, it all goes back to the question of how good is your visual perceptive system in general, and how open are you to start by looking at yourself first, how you observe and assess first, and then relating what you are habitually doing to the actual task that you're supposed to perform. So I think this one of the key findings is that when you ask experts, what is the first thing you look at when you meet someone for the first time? And I asked over 160 people this question. They all give you different answers. Like there's 160 different answers, which, scientifically speaking, might be frustrating, but on the other hand, is soothing because it tells us that there is a very individual approach to controlling perception or perceiving per se. So this is to
Okay.
me very soothing because it relates back to my holistic understanding of a person in their profession of a person, in their life of a person, in their state. So there's much more that needs to be explored, but I think it would be very, very relevant to assess perceptive skills, task related, scenario related, practice based, and including personal elements of individual patterning in scenario assessment and perception control.
Okay, so from what I understood, that we all have our own bias, I would say, of how we perceive people. And do they still, with their own bias, come to the same solution, or are also the solutions different due to that bias?
It's very, very good question. They come to similar solutions, but hardly ever to the exact same solution. It's this typical example. If I tell you to think of a cup, right? You imagine a cup, but the one you imagine, the one I imagine, is different. So in a way, there is similarities, but there is a very individual notion that kind of comes from your own experience and what you relate, right, to a cup. And so, yes, we come with our own biases, but the challenge, especially when it comes to security management and anything that is related to perceptive tasks in relation to security, is that some of the biases I'm just not aware of. So I become aware of my biases in conflicts, in challenges, in failure, right? But I don't have time and I don't have the allowance to fail when it comes to security management. So it would be very appropriate to know your biases before you even enter this field, which of course is utopia. Like, in a way it's utopia, but um, on the other hand, um, at least from my experience, if you have people coming to this kind of profession because it's their calling, they just feel very strongly about it, they kind of naturally apply this approach by always questioning themselves and always questioning, is this really relevant, what I'm seeing, what I'm sensing here? What does my colleague say? So the team is also really relevant in this. They feedback with the team to make sure that, this is not in their mind. This is probably really reality.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting what you're saying, that some people have a calling for security, of course,
Mm,
but I also hear that it's learnable, so that you can
mm,
learn about your own bias, that you can become a better observer, I would say.
yes.
Yeah, and maybe if you're not the best observer, that's why we have video technology, right?
Mm.
So can we also somehow detect that on video, or how is it different from maybe seeing a person in real life?
Mm. Yeah. Yes, of course, you can detect certain elements of individual movement patterning or of any relevant movement patterns that are, important for a specific research question that you're investigating. Of course, you can analyze those things in videos. However, we know that any video is never the full picture. It depends on so many different factors, and we have to be very cautious when analyzing this, especially when it comes to forensics or when it comes to analysis that then leads to some sort of evaluation in front of a court, right? Or if it's ad hoc analysis, imagine a CCTV footage in a tube station, right? Okay, I have the impression that I'm seeing the guy that we're looking for, X, person X, and is it the guy? Is it not the guy? So yes, we can detect certain elements in videos. However, we have to be really aware of the technological backdrop that comes with it and its limitations. So the quality of the movement cannot be visible due to lighting, camera angle, elements of a video missing, the actual cut that I'm offered as compared to 2 minutes earlier and 2 minutes after. So they're very, very a lot of elements that are challenging here.
Okay. Do you think that AI can help us with that, maybe?
Mm. Yeah, I love this question because I'm usually part of the team that is in favor of human observers for many reasons. The AI system is only as good as the material that you feed it. And especially in security management, we have the challenge of not always being able to use the footage that would be needed in order to actually get the outcomes that we're looking for. So we're getting training materials that are probably not as versatile and not as, expressive as we would need them to be. So if you invest in a system, for example, analyzing security in an international hotspot, like an airport, for example, right? You need specific elements of training material in order to really get the outcomes that you need. And what's the word I'm looking for? What my biggest concern is that coming from the other end of the line of analysis, I would actually support the idea of looking at the markers and individual patterns of movement that are relevant first and feeding a system to detect those and then combine it with the relevant video footage that you have. I don't know if that's even technically possible. Probably somebody knows much better about this than me, but this is, what I would hope for, because otherwise we're training the system to detect things that are not reliable.
Yes. Yeah, okay. So I also think that CCTV is a good thing, because I also work with events, and if you can sit in the control room and see the whole event, which you could not do if you would be on the ground, I think that's pretty good. And we also have AI for detecting, for example, panic, or if panic is coming up. And I think it's helpful, but it's also, like you're saying, it can just fail. For example, we had a blackout and then everything is gone, right? Or like you're also saying, if you feed them the wrong stuff, we see it a lot with AI, that people just feed them something and suddenly we have a racist AI, or we have something that's just not working. So I 100% agree with you. And now, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to add on to this, because you laid it out so nicely there. Having the boots on the ground, or having an understanding for what it is like to have the boots on that specific ground, is crucial. So in a lot of research projects, we see that, it's critical to have real life footage. It's critical to have scenario based footage. It's critical to have an assessment done in the field. Otherwise, you can just throw all this research in the bin. At least this is my I would always prefer to have a real scenario footage. But then, interestingly, it comes down to the analyst having the final say about what it is that we see. And now at some point, which is also logical, it comes to ethical and moral questions. Am I really in the position to decide, that's what we're really seeing, or yes, this is an experienced offender, or yes, whatever the intent, that this guy wanted to do this or that, or this woman wanted to do this and that, and this moment. We can see the initiation of the intent right here, which I would say is actually visible, right? So am I the person? Is it correct that a person should take this burden, should hold this burden, right? So it then all boils down to ethical and moral questions, which maybe a human that is well trained and that is aware of those aspects might decide more human-like on. It's really, I don't have the right words here, but this is probably a safer way to go. Unless, of course, you don't have a fanatic at the end of the analysis line, then we have a bigger problem. Then the problem is even bigger.
Okay. No, I 100% agree. If it comes down from human to human, we should not put technology in between, or at least that should be like the very last step to put that in and do the research and testing first. Yeah. And now there's an example coming to my mind, which I looked at, and I also looked at the study. Mm-hmm. So there was a study done with prisoners who have been charged with crimes like battery, with crimes like robbery, or even rape. And they showed them video footage of normal humans walking down the street. Yes. And they all selected the same victims to prey on. Have you heard about the study?
Of course, yes, very famous study.
Yes, and I think it's interesting that not only police officers do this, that they, or security professionals, that they try to detect certain behavior, that also criminals do that. So what's your take
Definitely.
on that?
Well, it's logical. Let's back it up a little bit. Let's look at the human as a animal in an environment, right? We all are aiming for development, evolve. We want to evolve. The human, the DNA is driving a force within us biologically to look for opportunities to evolve, right? And so in all the millions of years coming from hitting something with a rock to coming today, what is we still have in common is that we define certain territories where we manipulate things or life or people and it all comes down to using the environment to our own advantage. This can be done positively, negatively, in a criminal way, in an adapted way, socially comfortable or right or wrong way. I mean, of course. And what you're describing in the study is that they were asked which of those people would they actually decide to prey on, right? So the question was, who are you going to pick to actually assault them or steal from them, or and um, we display our physicality, our mindset, our goals, our everything we want to share with the world or we don't want to share, right? We display in the way we move, in the way we talk, in the way we dress, in the way we relate to others, and so forth. And it is really hard to mask. So the criminal learns to knows his environment very well, and learns to spot the outliers that are not really comfortable in this environment, or just do not know how to carry themselves in this environment. If somebody's not physical enough to take a hit or take a punch, right? you know Probably they've been in a lot of fights, so they know who is physically fit and who's not, and you become accustomed to look for certain patterns in the movement that are relevant in the context that you want to work in. So going back to the example that we discussed before, if I am assessing future police officers, I'm looking for certain elements. If I'm assessing people to become I don't know, teachers, educators, psychologists, firemen, there are certain elements that I will assess, and the criminal is just really good at assessing the others without giving away a lot from themselves. So they're good at masking and good at observing both.
Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting, and like you're saying, it's just logical that humans assess humans. I think we all do it, no matter if we're security professionals or not. But of course, if you're a security professional, you do it more, and if you're a criminal, you're looking for prey. Of course, you also do it more frequently than maybe the normal human being who's just going down the street.
Yeah.
So, from your experience, let's say, how can we detect, very practical, someone who's up to something?
Yeah. Well, looking at it at an individual level and a crowd level, I think is very different. So, and we have to differentiate between a very well trained and educated criminal and a criminal just, kind of taking an opportunity, right? Maybe not being in the game for long and just seeing an opportunity and just going for it. So I think the latter one is really hard to detect because this is just a notion of speed, right? It is very unpredictable because they're just taking the moment and taking advantage of the moment and the scenario that they're in. Criminals that are well trained hardly ever work alone. Usually they come in teams. They are very good at, searching the area, observing the area prior to actually doing anything that they're up to. So they know their territory, just like I said before, and spotting them would take a lot of time. So if we go back to movement analysis and analysis of behaviors, I would say, okay, this is bigger phrases of information that we need, because we will see them, at certain times of the day, certain times of the year, in certain, I don't know, way they're trying to maybe mask or camouflage what they're actually doing, and it takes a very good and versatile team to detect those. That's why I'm going to say, high profile criminals need high profile observers in order to be detected, and a very good cross team communication in order to actually move the information around. Plus, when it comes to security management on a crowd level, spotting those people, I think there is a combination of former information, historical information, security background checks, and information that comes with it. So they're already briefed before the person steps on the ground, usually. If we take an example of something that might happen to us every day, somebody trying to manipulate us into a deal, for example, right? Like in business, for example, also criminal fraud, right? Then the safest way to detect is by listening more than observing, because these people are usually very good in resonating and emotionally and empathically resonating with the counterpart. And they would be assessing and walking you through their script without you noticing it. So it's more important to listen and do classic, I'm going to say what is probably considered as classic lie detection, rather less listen to the content and know what to ask, and learn how to really listen to your gut feeling as well in relation to what is discussed, rather than trying to spot an emotional reaction in their face, because it will probably not be visible.
Okay. Yeah, it's very interesting that you're saying that, because I just had a call with someone who said, I talked to someone and yeah, she was charismatic, everyone likes her, but there's something was off. That's basically what he said. Yeah, he said it's like you're saying, the gut feeling. Something is wrong with this person, even though she's highly likable. She knows what to say and who to say it to. And I think it's what you're saying. He says he detected this like micro lies, like things that are not really
Yeah.
matching. And also, like you're saying, people can mask very good, but also when he walks into the room, it's this first where the mask is not there right now, and then she puts on this mask, and then she's happy and fine, and everything is good. But he said when he walked into the room, she was like shocked, and then she put on the mask, and then she was the highly likable person again. So that, yeah, is matching.
Let me hook into this, because it's really nice again how you're spelling it out. The here is what I think is really relevant. Obviously, I have a background in psychology, so I work with traffic offenders. I'm working in traffic psychology, and working with offenders of any color, kind, age, background, from all social and hierarchical, fields in the society, um, and having them come to my office and needing to talk to me, like they have to talk to me before they go to the assessment. I really think it's important to be aware of the fact that I am 50% of this conversation and the other person is 50%. So I have a situation going while I'm entering this room, and the other person is bringing a whole bunch of history with them. And now we are in this room together, and we're walking on the same ground, and we're trying to make sense of this conversation. So I'm always willing to give the other one the benefit of a doubt, especially when you are in open territory, outside in a coffee shop or at a conference or somewhere. There is just too much going on. You don't know if the person has jet lag. You don't know if they have a stomach ache. You just don't know. You just don't know. I would then still defend the effect of a question, though. If I ask the person, listen, are you okay? Or, how's your flight? How's your breakfast? And then, I can see, okay, there's something here. Then this is enough information for me to back off and just let the person stand there. I will define the line of territory that I allow the other person to go into. But the situation is different if we want something from the other, right? Like, if this is where the game changer comes in. We want to see approval. We want to see understanding. We want to feel resonance. We want to be understood. We want to sell the product, whatever. We want to have, the right teammate for a security detail, right? So we are looking for these indicators. And now the problem of the bias comes in, right? So it is a challenging thing, but again, you said it earlier, it is crucial to listen to your gut and just stop at the point where you feel like you should be stopping. Just stop. Stop doesn't mean I'm not going to talk to you again. Stop doesn't mean I understood everything right now and I made my decision, full stop, stamp on it, and that's it. It just means I'm holding this moment right here to make maybe sense of it later.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree, because I think, like, to round it up here, that we always come with our own bias, right? We come also with our own emotions, because also if we work in security, our energy is not always 100%, our happiness is not always our 100%. We also have our own private life, maybe also our own private problems. So of course we also bring that into the conversation. And if I'm tired and I look at someone, I might think that he or she is tired as well, because I'm tired. So yes, we're projecting our own emotions maybe in the conversation or on the other person. And I think it's good what you're saying, that always in doubt, we know we have a bias, we know we have emotions of our own, and that if we ask a question, and of course, if the person is bluntly lying, saying one thing yesterday, the other thing tomorrow, I think that's pretty obvious. But if we try to detect like micro emotions, or try to detect if someone's putting a mask on or not, we always need to be aware that, we bring our own bias and mask with us. So,
Definitely.
maybe for another tip, or a last tip from your side, how can we improve our own situational awareness and observer skills?
Yes. Well, in order to enhance situational awareness, I really need to become aware of my own perceptive skills and also my physical and emotional incapabilities. So I need to know my limitations physically and also mentally. And I need to have some sort of critical assessment of my own capabilities under stress. So I've seen all the different things happen in scenarios. I've seen highly profilely skilled, people in security failing in a stress test. I've seen people that are humble and quiet and just not really expressive, being the strongest in a team when it comes to for example, in hostile environment training, something like that. So I've seen all of it. And so for good situational awareness and good observation skills, I need to be ready to fail. And I need to be ready to look twice. I think this is the most important advice I can give. The most important thing is look twice. The second I see something and I think it's relevant, okay, well done, good, but look twice just to be sure whether you really need to act on it. I think the observation skill that you need in order to be situationally aware can be trained every day. We can, the second we start exiting our house, we can start looking to the right and left and not only at the phone. We can, instead of, playing with a key or, shouting something to the neighbor, we can scan the area. We can look at the weather conditions. We can, make sure that things like that, like the tank is full before we leave and things like that. So it leads to all the different kinds of elements that are also pretty relevant in security management at some point, but it kind of all links together. It really means observing yourself in your territory, uh, in your field that you work in your profession, in your daily life, and understand that the criminal is looking for the loopholes that you're not aware of. So the moment that you're putting your car away and taking the car to go shopping, and not being aware of what you want to buy right this moment, or um, let's take the IT for a second, or the computer for a second. The thing that you keep working on a computer and never closing all the tabs and never changing your passwords. I mean, these are the loopholes that they're looking for. So you need to become aware of those and of your habits, and become aware of your physical, emotional, and yeah, yeah, limitations, what you're capable of under stress.
Yeah, I think that's very crucial what you're saying. And I think no one ever, because I talked to other people about situational awareness as well, but I think no one ever said it, that we also need to look on ourselves and our own behavior, and not only observe the environment, which of course is one part of situational awareness, but also that we look at ourselves and our own habits, our own bias, whatever we do, whatever our weaknesses also are, what we maybe don't like to admit, but we all have them. So
Yeah.
I think that's, now we have the whole situation awareness, the observation of other people, but also the observation of ourselves.
Yes, let me give you an example for that. I teach situational awareness and basic self-defense classes for kids and for women, and just on a community level, just because I'm here, just because they know me, just because it's possible, just because I can. Okay. And here, the most striking thing to me is that most of the people come with a very strange idea of what security is, what scenario is, what a hit is, what running is. So they come with all these imaginative elements of what their reality is, and the first and most important thing is bursting their bubble and telling them, well, first of all, 100% security doesn't exist, and it does matter where you go, when you go, with whom you go, why you go, what you wear, what your shoes look like, what you have on you. It does matter. If you do not want to get in trouble, it's actually very simple. Don't leave the house, right?
Yeah.
But this is not what this is not possible. So if you want to be more safe when you go outside, you need to consider those things when you want to, move around in your territory. So why do you go out alone at night, parking at the last spot available? Why can't you find somebody to talk to, at the entrance, and saying, listen, I'm invited, here's my invitation, but is there any way I can park a little bit, further to the front? I mean, why are you not having this conversation? Because now somebody knows you were looking for a spot. If now somebody hits you in the place, they knew you were there. They've seen your face. They will recognize you on the camera and say, this is the girl. And so it's okay. So it is a challenge to make people aware that it's them, that they need to control how they approached it. They need to put the effort in. They need to put the work in order to be safer. It's not the police. It's not anybody else. It's you first and foremost. And of course, if I don't know what to do anymore, if I'm losing it, and then of course, thank God we can call the police, and thank God somebody's going to come to our rescue. But it's really them that need to put the work in, and people don't like that. People don't like admitting that they don't feel safe, because the second they feel unsafe, they then start questioning, why is that? And this is the person that is responsible for that, and they are responsible. No, no, no. You chose the place where you lived. You chose the husband that you have. You chose the lock that you have on the door. You can decide differently every second, right?
Yes. No, I 100% agree. And I think that was a good call to action that
Mm.
everyone needs to mind their own security. Of course, you can call the police, you can get a bodyguard, whatever, but you need to look at your own behavior, like what am I doing, and potentially change it if you don't like what you're seeing. So, Sandra, thank you very much for being here. It was very, very interesting for having you. We will have another short episode, I would say, on German, right? On what you are actually working on right now. You already
Yes.
said you are doing a little bit for children, like some self-defense, etc. And we will have another small episode, I would say, on German. So thank you very much for this long one, and I see you soon.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.